Share. All right. So we have folks coming in now. Great. Um, all right. So as folks are coming in, we'll be getting started with the official the official webinar here shortly. I'll go ahead and just do some intro information. One, you may see a little bit different than usual webinars or usual meetings through Zoom, intentionally because we want to make sure and accent the educational purposes of this event. You'll see that you should have your chat or your camera's off, and you should be limited to what you can do in chat. The goal is to ensure participation is limited to more of a engaging space if we have time for the Q&A. The goal here is to make sure folks have a chance to engage authentically wherever you are. So if you are not by your computer right now, you ain't got to be. You don't have to turn your camera on. You can pretend that this is a podcast in this space where you're able just to listen and learn some great information as well, right? I'll give another moment here. Looks like folks are in pretty good. Appreciate all of you also waiting. This is the first time I've had a chance to do this event using the webinar settings as they were. So those that were coming in right at 11 o'clock, I tried to make sure to cut off those at the past to make sure you're aware that we started at 11:30. The 11 o'clock time was used for myself and these fantastic panelists, just to make sure our sound check was good, our audio was great, and we had the best setup for you all as we go through here, right? So that being said, let me go ahead and jump in and thank you all for being here for this fantastic offering that we have with the Race and Social Equity Academy. Let me start my screen share here. Get little graphics, or was that just struggling starting up? There we go. All right, so if you are here for the Race and Social Equity Academy, RASE, LGBTQIA health, safety, and well-being offering, you're in the right place. This is an event that was sparked just to make sure that RASE, as we are, and what we do here is able to offer different types of engagements to support learning more about, engaging with, and understanding the different populations, the many different populations that we have in our society. For those unaware, you'll find, and I'll also, I believe I can, add this information, these slides, while they are brief, to the follow-up email that you'll receive after attending this. Should be going out by tomorrow if the settings are accurate. But those that are not aware of, that are not familiar with UNC Charlotte, our School of Social Work, or the Race and Social Equity Academy, this is who we are by our mission. You'll find a link here. You can also do a internet search for the Race and Social Equity Academy for UNC Charlotte. Our mission, as it states, is to foster scholarship of practice and research focused on advancing racial and social equity, right? Much of the audience, not all, but much of the audience are social workers or social work adjacent individuals who are aware of and engaging in social practices, social equity, social justice. RASE wants to continue that, right? And like many other organizations and institutions, we do our best to offer that in a variety of ways. This being the first offering of a webinar that's able to support educational access as well, as an event that will be maintained and shared through our Race and Social Equity Academy RASE website as well. So the goal being for you all participating or that are here to hear about this can also follow up, share this information once it's posted on the RASE website. So you have a link here. Again, you can follow up and search for RASE Academy, or you can go to it right now, or you can go to it later on and find this video offering as well as others later on as well to better understand and share around when it comes to different topics that we'll be covering. For today's event, our general learning objectives, this ain't classroom, but we are doing something to make sure you have a takeaway from this space, right? So increasing awareness of LGBTQI identities. I'll go ahead and say it now. You will likely hear an interchangeable use of LGBTQ, LGBTQ+, queer, different acronyms and ways to describe this community. It is not to dismiss, or if there happens to be a mentioning of LGBTQ or LGB as opposed to the others, they're all intended to be interchangeable. There's a lot of different ways people identify. So what we don't want to do is limit or manage identification. And it's also, for me, not being a member of the community, I want to make sure that I am able to properly express and identify individuals as you choose to be identified. So please understand that if you hear a difference in the usage of acronym or queer, it's intended to cover all individuals within the spectrum and not to limit the visibility of anyone specifically with any particular identification. We're also going to encourage allyship and inclusive behavior, promote access to health and community resources, and apply ethical considerations when working with LGBTQ community members, right? So this is a lot that can be encompassed in this time that we have. And you'll find once we get going that this conversation is one that can be continue for the next hour or two or so, right? There's a lot to be covered, but we hope that you have these takeaways that you're able to better support, work with, understand, and engage within this community as well. This offering is one that aligns with the Council of Social Work Education curricular activities. You'll have a link as well to the 2022 EPAS standards. This is an academic institution, and academic work is happening here. And this is one of a part of our ability to meet the standards as expressed by CSWE. This is an offering that we have that is able to align with their curricular activities as well. Just briefly for those, just to have some statistical information so you can see what the population variance looks like. This is from a Gallup poll, which you'll have linked to here as well, which shows what the population roughly looks like when it comes to the LGBTQ community in the United States. I believe this is from a 2022 breakdown or statistic, so it may not be exactly to the number relevant. You might have different statistical numbers depending on what you're looking at, but overall, 85% of the population roughly says the answer to the poll says they're heterosexual, 7.6% identifying with one or more LGBTQ groups, and 6.8% declined to respond. So it shows just a general breakdown of the makeup of what can be considered within the American population in the US when it comes to the LGBTQ community. There's a lot that can be said and stated when it comes to representation, and this is just one of those metrics that shows the amount of individuals who exist within this space and that are encompassed by this identity and what they look like. And I love the part at the bottom that the poll mentions the difference of types, right? We're looking at queer, pansexual, asexual. There are a variety of identities are encompassed by the LGBTQ and queer community. So understand, if nothing else, that this is not a fly-by-night group. This is not individuals who all of a sudden just popped up out of nowhere. The community has always been there, and thankfully enough, we're starting to get more visible representation statistics to show the representation as well, right? So yeah, this is just something for you to see here that aren't aware of, that might just be curious of what the breakdown can look like. This is also, and it's very important to remember, this is self-identification. And as we get through and go through their questions, you may understand why individuals may or may not want to self-identify or put their information out there when it comes to representation as well. So this is a snapshot, does not mean it's 100% accurate, but for those that did answer these polls, this is the representation that we have in the United States by the Gallup poll when it comes to representation of the LGBTQ community. Lastly, before we get started, I want to share this because, again, as many of the individuals who are watching this now and individuals who may watch this offering later on, and I did not notice this until after all of my panelists have been confirmed, we all social workers up in here, right? Everyone right now who is on the panel who will be joining us, who I'll be introducing after here shortly, are social workers, social work students. So the NASW is something that is very much represented in the work that we do. What's in front of you is a message, and I believe this was as of 2 years ago, maybe 2023 or so when this was posted. I'm not sure exactly on the time frame. The NASW statement, which is also linked at the bottom, when it comes to the LGBTQIA Two-Spirit Plus community. And I'm going to read this as it is, just to ensure visibility for the population, especially considering current social circumstances that might otherwise limit visibility of the population. And as it's stated here from the NASW, people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and or gender expansive, queer and or questioning, intersex, asexual, and two-spirit LGBTQIA 2S+ are members of every community and provide incredibly important contributions to society every day. NASW further recognizes that LGBTQIA 2-Spirit+ people have always been a part of our social work workforce and continue to make meaningful contributions to our profession. This section, and it goes into more when it goes to this section and in the website, provides resources to enhance social workers' capacity to support LGBTQIA2S plus people across the lifespan. Social workers have a responsibility, and I want to really enhance this part. Social workers have a responsibility to promote policies, laws, and programs to affirm, support, and value LGBTQIA2S plus individuals, families, and communities, right? So that's us. That's us as social workers. That's us as people who are working within the population. That's us as people who are doing our best to care and engage in the work that we do. So enough about me, enough about the introduction of what we're doing. Let me now introduce you to the panel that will be speaking with you primarily today. We're going to go down the list. We're going to start with Kristin Spooner, Dr. Spooner here. If you give us an introduction on who you are, what you do, and any representation groups that you have when it comes to the work that you do.
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Kristin Spooner. I identify as queer and gender non-compliant. My pronouns are she, they, and I'm a doctor of social work. I also have my master's in social work, and I'm a board certified sex therapist. And I teach at Lesley University. I'm the human sexuality educator there. And I also have a private practice where I do clinical work and I educate folks and I provide trainings and consultation entitled The Radical Social Worker. So thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you, Kristin. Same thing with you, Kevin, Professor Edwards-Knight.
Hi, everybody. My name, again, is Kevin Edwards-Knight. I am a senior lecturer in the School of Social Work at University of North Carolina, Charlotte. I've worked in the field of HIV starting in the late 1980s, the 90s, and through part of our current decade. I'm also an advocate of queer rights. I identify as a gay man. My pronouns are he, his, and I conduct training on LGBTQ plus and cultural humility in the community. I'm a proud member of the queer community, and I teach a course on social work in the LGBTQ community.
Thank you so much. Next, Danielle Willis.
Good morning. Like you said, my name is Danielle Willis. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I am the director of clinical services at Time Out Youth, which is a service organization and youth center for queer youth and young adults ages 13 to 24. We're located in Charlotte, but we provide services to all of North Carolina and the northern part of South Carolina. Oh, and my pronouns are she, her.
Thank you. And last and absolutely not least, Zay.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Zay Hassell. I'm currently pursuing my bachelor's of social work at UNC Charlotte with hopes of continuing my education to my master's of social work to become a psychotherapist for the LGBTQ plus community.
Great. There we go. Thank you, Zay. I appreciate that. So again, where we're coming from, this is going to be a great conversation that we have related to the LGBTQIA community. Again, interchangeable language, but not intended to exclude. As well, I will offer a possible trigger warning, if only considering that there may be conversational information here that could open doors for possible triggers for individuals, past experiences as well, right? So just so you know, wherever you are, take this moment with grace, and hopefully you're able to grow with us as we have this conversation. Excuse me. So individual work navigating transitions, intersectionality, and identity of queer individuals and communities, personal experiences, and understanding how changes are not always progressive and continuous, right? This work that we do is something that is very, very intense and it involves our own personal and professional experiences. So I'll ask you all, we'll start actually here with Danielle. From your own experience and expertise, what are the needs and challenges related to the health, safety, and well-being of the LGBTQIA community have you seen yourself?
So many. I could go on for a very long time. The There are a lot of things that immediately come to mind. And I think in tandem with your beautiful trigger warning, I think something that as a clinician, I am seeing very largely and has been on the rise is suicide amongst the LGBTQ community, young adults, and suicide attempts. And I think additionally, which is in the same bucket, but also different, is access to gender affirming care, which kind of my biggest caveat and my soapbox for gender affirming care is if access to it is not open, then individuals will still continue to figure out how to get what they need. So while there's like a very large mental health component, and then also physical health that needs to be given attention to.
Thank you for that. Thank you. When you mentioned the individuals finding a way no matter what, right? So if we're not giving access freely, then individuals are going to find a way to receive the care themselves. It very much resonates what we see or we hear about when it comes to women's health care and the stances when it comes to abortion rights and abortion access is we're not stopping care from happening. We're stopping the safety of the care from happening there as well. So I think that's a really great resonating point that you brought up there as well. Zay, from your experience as well, if you could offer from your space what you see as challenges or needs related to the health, safety, and well-being of the community as well.
Yeah, for sure. So one of my experiences that highlights the intersection of identity and safety within the context of legal parameters, it occurred during my trip to visit my family in Toronto over Christmas break, and my passport picture was taken before hormone therapy. So that made me feel vulnerable at TSA and customs, also immigration and border protection. To minimize that risk of discrimination or mistreatment, including not being allowed to travel across international borders, I felt the need to shave my facial hair to limit this risk. This weighed heavily on me as a transgender person because someone who isn't transgender would not experience this same situation. So it forced me to align my physical appearance to adhere to society's expectation around my appearance aligning with government issued identification.
Thank you for that, Zay. Thank you. Thank you. Kevin, if you could share with us your experiences.
Sure, I'd be glad to. A lot of my experience in the past has been around HIV, and one of the things that concerns me the most at this point is that the CDC has been ordered to take down any information on their website related to LGBTQIA+. And this is really disturbing because there's 32,000 people were newly diagnosed with HIV in 2022, and almost 50% of the new infections occur in the South and occur with gay, bisexual, and men who have sex with men. And Black people make up 37% of new infections, but only 12% of the population. And trans identifying individuals made up 37,000 new HIV infections in 2019. So I think by removing information from the CDC website is just one step that further stigmatizes HIV, but it also limits the education about the spread of HIV.
Thank you for sharing that, Kevin. I appreciate it. And Kristin, last but not least, please share with your experience as well.
The problem with me going last is I've heard what everyone has to say, and now I have a million things to say, so I'm going to try to wrap it up nicely. But so if we're thinking about gender affirming care, I think it's really important to note that gender affirming care applies to everyone, right? Even cisgender folks, right? So if you are cis, that means that your gender identity aligns with the assigned sex at birth. But you know, cisgender women receive hormone replacement treatment all the time during menopause to navigate certain hormonal experiences, right? Almost any form of plastic surgery is gender affirming care, right? So I think we're sort of understanding this in a way that others people, when really gender affirming care is for all of us, and we should be championing that for everyone. So there's sort of that piece. And also when we're thinking about suicidality, right, as someone who's a therapist, I mean, I think I was looking up statistics, and it was like an increase in crisis hotline for LGBTQ plus youth, like 700% as of November 6th, right? So that's the increase in folks reaching out because they're scared and they're considering potentially harming themselves as a result. So I think that that's really important to note too. But for me and the work that I do, I work with a lot of LGBTQ plus identified folks. And one of the big issues more recently is this idea of, should I begin certain types of transition, whether social or medical, knowing the social context right now, right? Will this put a target on my back? Will this make it easier for the government or other folks to kind of identify who I am and harm me, right? I've had clients who have asked if I think that they should leave the country, whether they'll be safe here. And so, you know, a lot of the work that we're doing is education, but also like, how do you prepare for the worst while hoping and still being optimistic that things will be okay, and also doing what's right for you. Safety is number one, and I encourage my clients to really put that forth when considering these things. But yeah, it's a really scary time, and a lot of therapy is kind of preparing folks, whether it's documentation, getting certain things ready. If you do feel like you want to leave at some point, if it doesn't feel safe here anymore, how do you get things ready so that you're not scrambling last minute? Or so those are just some examples, but yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yes, no, so this has been a great, I think what you all have laid out is a great preface that covers where we're going to go next with this, because we're talking about this importance of visibility, right? So being able to be seen, but also how are you being seen? Are you seen in a way that represents you as you are? Or are you seen as a way that represents how someone else intends to see you? And what they do with that information is very important to potential safety concerns as well. And as has been mentioned already with gender affirming care, and thank you, Danielle, for mentioning like this, the very broad ways in which that happens, like, and Kristin as well, this gender affirming care is a thing we hear about very often, but when it's specific to this community, we hear about it in a way that is limiting, that is policy driven, that is something that should not be done, and something that is possibly harmful. So as we dive into this question about safety, I want to also make sure there's a very visible question. And for those of you who are not familiar with some of the policy spaces, we often see policies driven by interpretation of how it's defined. So if we're defining a policy based off of the harms or the benefits of a thing like gender affirming care, if we believe that gender affirming care is harmful, then we're going to restrict it more often, or we're going to make it harder to be able to receive, because the idea is to limit the harm that we're having. So for individuals that may believe that, even though we know, as mentioned, that gender affirming care is something that's far broader and far more available and happening within many different communities, what would, for those of you that want to offer, Kristin, I guess I'll start with you. What would you say to someone that says they believe that gender affirming care is a harmful treatment and they would not want someone, especially within their care, to receive that? What would you say to them?
I mean, I would want to have a conversation with them about what they know about gender affirming care. I think a lot of folks just are really misinformed, and we're seeing that there's a lot of information out there that isn't accurate, that's painting certain things in a light that I think if you are someone who doesn't know anything about it, maybe you would be concerned about it, right? Because it's being vilified and it's being made to think that, you know, folks to think that it's going to cause harm or yeah, so I think like education is so important, and collective knowledge, right? I think it's all of our jobs, so we have accurate, informed information to be providing that to folks who want to listen. And I think that there are a lot of folks out there who will listen if given the opportunity. So yeah, I would say when it comes to that, education is really important.
There we go. Lost my mic there for a second. Thank you. Yes, I mean, this is the part of the conversation when we're talking about just giving freely giving access to information to make sure everyone is informed as much as possible. Being frightened of something that you're not informed about, or that you have limited information about, or information that all you have is fearful, makes sense because you're scared of something that sounds scary. So making sure that people have the best information is a great way to be able to offer something else. I appreciate that. Danielle, could you also share with us any thoughts that you have when it comes to individuals related to gender affirming care, whether they need more information, or your thoughts in general on the concept of?
Yeah, that was very well said. And I agree. I think education is at the forefront of how to kind of tackle this topic, and also conversation. I often am curious what the barrier is for them and why they feel like it's something that should be stopped. Often I hear specifically from parents is a concern about someone changing their mind, beginning the transition process, realizing it's not for them. And statistically, it's anywhere between 1 and around 10% of people that actually detransition, and it's more heavily on the around 1%. So while I can understand the concern, there's in balance with that, it's looking at what is the alternative. So if someone is unable to transition, we've seen that it increases suicidality, suicide attempts, self-harm, alcohol use, substance use. There's just, it's education, education and conversation, and kind of pulling at the threads of what's underneath this fear and desire for bans.
Yes, that's a great one. That's a great one. So education, and then that's a great point that cannot be overemphasized, is making sure we know. And I think that the part about conversations is amazing too. I recently heard a statement of people make their decisions or come to conclusions based off their own prejudices, right? So if we're looking at individuals and what makes them think what they think, or where they come from, what conversations are being had, and what do you think? How are we prejudging a situation, and what does that make us now believe or consider when it comes to certain types of topics? That's a great point you've made there as well. Zay, I would love to come to you as well and speak, because you already offered like this visiting family and this international connection to Canada. Can you share with us any experiences that you've had when it comes to the differences of where you are location-wise between the United States generally and you're in the international space with Canada?
Yeah, I definitely feel like there's more education in Toronto. There's more openness about gender affirming care. There's more real information. And I feel like just what Danielle and Kristin said were spot on about the misinformation and just people not being as educated and really know what gender affirming care does for people. And there are so many like community organizations that promote the well-being of LGBTQ plus individuals, like the Trevor Project and local LGBTQ centers that provide those critical resources that help transgender and non-binary individuals. So yeah, I definitely feel like there should be more visibility and more just truth about it, you know?
Thank you there. And Kevin, so we're talking a bit here between this conversation of gender affirming care and visibility and importance of, would you be able to share any of your experience when it comes to just the thought of what it's the importance of visibility within the space of being within the community?
My goodness. Well, I'd be glad to, because I'm probably the oldest one on the panel. So I've lived through being indivisible and having to hide my identity for many years. One, to keep my job, and one to just to feel safe. But so I think that visibility is definitely critically important at this point in our world and in our nation, that visibility equals existence right now, that we're really fighting for our existence and the lives that we've created. And since I'm a real big advocate on older adults and LGBTQ plus IA folks, because as we know that there's been some advances made with senior care regarding inclusiveness of the LGBTQIA community. I'm worried that some of those advances will no longer be available, and some of those opportunities for inclusive care in long-term care facilities and those kind of things will slowly diminish, and that's a concern. But one more thing I want to add, Matthew, I'm sorry, you got me started.
Go for it, take your time.
One thing that I think, that really is true across the spectrum is education, because so many people will rely on government for their information, and we as social workers have to make sure that we are knowledgeable and that we get the correct information out there.
Yes, right. So let's bring this back into this social work space, right? So those that are unfamiliar with social workers or what we do, there's a lot within our work and practice. It's built off seeing individuals from the multiple spaces that we exist in, right? Intersectionality being the theory or the theme that we have often we talk about. And there's a lot of layers that I'm hearing and seeing here of people coming from different spaces when it comes to, as Kristin mentioned, hey, should I just leave, right? And the conversation of should I just leave also begs well, can you? Are you able to just leave? Is that a response based off of emotion or based off of resources? And when you leave, wherever you go, what do those resources look like? So this conversation that we're having right now has multitudes, as things do. And I would love to talk a bit more about this intersectional space of people trying to be safe. Because what I'm hearing is, depending on where you are, the conditions that you are facing, the visibility, and also the information that individuals have about you or what they may think about you can compromise or hopefully enhance your ability to be safe. So when it comes to where individuals are, how can we ensure this intersectional conversation is being had, or we're understanding the intersectionality when it comes to our existence? So for anyone that could share, what are spaces that you believe your intersections of your identities impacts your identity as within the community or someone that's allied in the work that you do, right? So I'm thinking of individuals who might be affluent, having access to being able to leave the areas and spaces. That's the intersection we're seeing when it comes to affluency and social economic status. Individuals leaving for fear and then winding up in spaces that they now have to balance out. I'm safer, but can I afford to be able to be here as well, right? Kristin, I think I've started with you before, but I'm gonna start with you again here. Being someone who is not of the North Carolina area, what's it look like with individuals who have traveled across the state to be able to be where you are, to have support or have hopefully more support than they were accustomed to?
Yeah, so up here in Massachusetts, it's definitely a bit more affirming. Definitely not entirely. I was actually just looking at some bills that are being put forth, and while I don't know if they would actually be moved forward, there are still attempts at banning students from playing certain sports, curriculum censorship, and I forget what the other, forced outing of students in school. So this is still happening or attempting to happen in Massachusetts, but I do know folks who have come here to live here from places like Ohio and Indiana. And, Massachusetts is one of the most expensive states to live in the country. So there's a level of intersectionality around, like, are you someone with financial privilege? Can you come and live here and reasonably survive here with the way prices are in rent and food and all of these things, right? So I know folks who've come here and are really struggling. So it's a balance between what do I prioritize for myself? Do I prioritize safety around my identity and access to the care I need? Do I prioritize my financial well-being and being able to live more comfortably. So there are a lot of pieces here that I think are really important, that, it might feel safer to be here, but there are costs associated with that safety, unfortunately, that I think is just, rooted in capitalism and other issues that we're seeing in a larger sort of, a larger issue. So yeah.
Thank you. Zane, I think you also mentioned greatly when it came to having to shave your beard to be able to, I mean, and this, please correct me if I'm wrong with using language, but to be able to pass better when it comes to your identification, right? If you could share with me what that feels like, or what that is, because I mean, speaking of myself, like the idea of me shaving my beard is an option. Like nothing of my prior facial construction would ever stop someone from going, "Oh, beard or no, you are who we think you are based off of this." So it's not really a consideration I have here. For you, when it comes to this ability to be seen and visible and pass, is there something more here that you could share with the people of what that experience is like?
Yeah, so right before I actually had to leave, it was actually something my mother suggested, and I really took it into consideration. My mother's very supportive and she's a wonderful lady. I love her, but yeah, she suggested this, and I was really taken aback because it was like it came from this person who supported me, and I kind of thought of it the wrong way, But as I realized and I understood her perspective, I also understood other people's perspective, because she's from an outside view, and I just had to see that. Even though it was really heartbreaking for me, it was not a fun experience, but it was something that I did have to do, that not everybody does have to do. And I feel like this experience underscores like the broader challenge of ensuring safety and dignity for transgender individuals when the legal documentation has not been changed yet to align with their identity. So yeah.
I mean, we've had legislation that exactly poses that problem to individuals, where depending on what the documentation says, or what how the policy lays out when it comes to how an individual has to be able to either be identified or identify, can also challenge just the idea that we can say, I mean, I'll say this out loud, just simplistically going to a bathroom, right? We're familiar with the HB2 legislation that was a part of North Carolina for some time, and the unfortunate harms that were caused by individuals just going into to a bathroom. But to underscore that point as well of not just the visibility and the identification, but also underscoring the principles of understanding, what does that policy really say? There are points of legislation that also harmed individuals who were not of the community, but because the legislation was kind of focused on one single point of identification, the parts that were related to individuals going to the bathroom with their children that were not a part of the community will kind of also run under the radar, right? So I think it's really important that we understand, when we're looking at how individuals are viewed, do we understand the history of what brings them there? And there's an underscored part of community violence that's brought into this, right? And when I say that, I don't mean like the physical interactions and the physical engagement violence, but the policies that drive certain conditions that can put individuals in harmful situations, right? Individuals who might now have to identify a certain way, or go into a bathroom or a space that does not fit them or fit their comfortability or their safety, can now be forced into situations that can cause them harm based off of someone else's considerations that have nothing to do with the person who is going to experience whatever they're going to experience. Thankfully, though, we do have community organizations that do support the different roles and identities and individuals and people within our society. So as we're starting to wrap up here, Danielle, if you could tell us, because you are currently working for one of those organizations right now, can you tell us more about the ways that community organizations can support individuals within the community, support their health, their safety, their well-being, and their overall interactions and engagements with society?
Yeah, certainly. Before that, I want to respond to the bathroom bill thing, because if you zoom out and really take into consideration the fear that is behind that, can you imagine a world where someone who wants to like inflict violence on somebody stops and is like, but I can't go into the bathroom because I'm not allowed, because that's not the gender that I look like. A perpetrator, or someone who wants to inflict harm on somebody, is not going to just stop because of a sign. Zooming out and having conversation is so important, because when you shine light on stuff, it just really doesn't make sense. But as an aside, community is extremely important. If statistically found by the Trevor Project, if specifically a youth, but if an individual has at least one safe and affirming adult in their life, they are 40% less likely to attempt suicide or have suicidal thoughts. And that's huge. That's just one person. A lot of times what we see in this space, so we offer a community space where if you're 13 to 24, you can come here, you can hang out, you can dress in the gender that feels affirming to you, you can find other people that are similar to you, and just increasing that knowledge that there are other people and that you're not existing in this box or this silo, even if your family is telling you that that's the case, or your school or whomever you're around is telling you that that's the case. There are a lot of LGBTQ people that exist, and you're not alone. And community and finding that support is huge. And Time Out Youth isn't going anywhere. That's my Time Out Youth plug. We will continue to fight through all of this. We're not government funded, so
Absolutely, yes. And again, that's underscoring all the points of visibility and engagement and safety, and having a space to go to feel that comfortable, but also to have that reinforcement. So thank you so much for that. Kristin, as well, you've spoken of your experience of being a therapist, right? So we know social workers, we are everywhere, right? We work in so many different places. For you, can you share with us either your work directly or your ways that you can see how community organizations, or just the idea of community in itself, can support individuals' well-being as well?
Absolutely. And just to quickly go off of what Danielle was saying about zooming out, I think we can also zoom out further and say, it's not about bathrooms, just like it wasn't about water fountains, right? This is a larger thing, right? Like, we want to step out and really take a look at the sociocultural context. And yeah, so there's that. But when I think about community, particularly with my clients, I think like utilizing one another to figure out where are safe places to go for support and service. Like, so many of my clients, I'm like, well, what is your community saying, right? Do you know anybody who's used this doctor before? And what was their experience? Was this person supportive and affirming, or were they harmful and dismissive, right? And so like utilizing collective knowledge as resistance and also as a way to find adequate care is super important. So I think you have community agencies who are amazing. And then I also think it's community of people who support each other by providing information. So like, I think, we're talking so much about education and conversation, and this is just like another piece of that within the community to be able to find quality and safe care and safe spaces.
Yes. And Kevin, you had mentioned before, I mean, you threw the age out there, so I'm going to say that the experience also follows to having likely so many experiences that can also connect to this conversation of building community and the impacts of community organizations as well. What can you share with us also in this conversation?
Right. Well, I think that one thing that we need to do is we really need to solicit and embrace and involve our allies greater than ever before. They need to really step up and join the community in this fight. I mean, because that's what we're looking at. It's a fight for our existence, for our identity, for our lives. And I think that we really need to come together, and all of the agencies that have already supported the LGBTQ plus IA community need to come together nationally, locally, state, all need to come together. But we also need to look at other partners like the American Psychiatric Association. We need them to come together with it, the American Medical Association. We need their support. So we need to kind of think, like everyone was saying, kind of open our lens a little bit and see who can we pull in to our net to support us and help us. And we need to look beyond some of our maybe petty differences and over funding or nuances, and we need to really come together to support each other and build up our community, because it's going to take all of us. It really is. And so we need our American Civil Liberties Union. We need a human rights campaign, Mental Health Association, APA, American Counseling Association, all of these, National Center for Transgender Equality, all these people to come together and join with us. The other thing that when we were talking about safety that I thought about, we need to keep our finger on making sure that those that serve and protect us continue to be culturally responsive to our community, and not just serve and protect some, but all.
Yes. All right, so we get cooking, or we really get going here. So for this conversation on the communities and the importance of, and I mentioned this because there's so many intergenerational and other components besides what might be visible to us. Zay, I'll offer this to you here as, I mean, again, not to assume, but likely the one of the younger individuals of the panel. For you, when it comes to community, because we're spanning the scope of engagement. Right now, the world you're growing up in is the world you're growing up in. You're used to what you're seeing around you. Are there ways that building community has been important and impactful to you over your journey as well?
Yeah, so I used to play volleyball for UNC Charlotte, and at that time I was suffering with my mental health just because I felt like I was not playing with the team that aligned with my gender identity. So that was that made me feel like my teammates weren't supportive, and it eventually led me to walk away from the sport. So I feel like if there were other like if there were other organizations that people with gender identity struggling, they could go to those teams instead, like that aren't in the NCAA. So there could be alternative teams for transgender people that still have the ability to play the sport that they love, and they don't have to completely walk away from it. They can still do the things that they enjoy, but do it with how they, present themselves.
So that's a big one. I think that really takes us into our final question. We're looking at the strategies and the ways that we can reduce the violence and discrimination within the community for our healthcare, our social, our community settings, professional settings, right? Because what over the time of this, for hopefully people have been able to really hear and highlight some of the conditions you've mentioned specifically, Zay, of when it comes to passing, when it comes to being comfortable with the representation that's around you, right? There are things that we can do that don't have to encompass this larger, at times more difficult entrance point of our political or social political settings. We're talking about what are ways that we as people can help support others that are around us, right? So having alternatives, the NCAA, and again, this is another conversation that we don't, we're not necessarily passing judgment either way on, but there's a lot of conversations around the NCAA when it comes to individuals attending sports, but also what's the future look like for them? Like that being a gateway for many professional athletes, Black individuals in low socioeconomic status conditions are able to jump from college football to possibly the NFL to be able to pursue a more lucrative career. But aside from that, just the ability to be a part of a community, to do the thing you love to do without having to have the gaze put on you of another entity that has maybe nothing to do with your future. You love the sport, you want to play the sport, but the sport is encompassed by this body that can cause other issues. Now here you are with one more thing that you have to worry about, concern yourself with. So we'll go down the line, and we'll start actually with Kevin. If you could share with us some strategies or thoughts you could express for solutions. What can we do to support the community? What are practical ways that individuals who are listening to this can come to this conversation and say, hey, here's something I can do from wherever I am right now?
Well, thank you, Matthew, for this opportunity. So more events like this definitely are ways to support the community, but also to bring people together, give them accurate information, and bring our allies on board more. And I think that what we need to do is we need to be sure that we are, you know, using local businesses that support the LGBTQ community. We need to also look at other organizations that are queer friendly, and we need to support O&A, or open and affirming religious institutions and organizations. And we need to show support, maybe not always monetarily, but by, spreading the word, by showing up, by advocating, because, as I'm sorry, as visibility has been talked about, it is critical at this point. And I feel, that we have an obligation to our liberation warriors in the gay liberation movement, for all the work that they've done, that we continue the fight, just like they did when there wasn't any laws or any kind of protections or any kind of rights.
Thank you, Kevin. Kristin, your thoughts? What are ways, strategies that we can support the community at large?
Yeah, I think, we are always stronger together. So engaging in collective resistance, right? If you're in an environment where someone says something that's harmful or inappropriate, or that continues to further misinformation or stereotyping, it's okay to acknowledge that that's not okay and that makes you uncomfortable. And it doesn't have to be aggressive. It doesn't have to be combative. It's just identifying that something isn't okay, and supporting one another when we see other people doing that as well, because it's really vulnerable to stand up against a very common and harmful narrative. So to have allies with you who come together and say, yeah, I'm not okay with that either, is so powerful. And just making sure that you're continuing to educate yourself. Make sure you're learning about what's happening, what changes are happening, right? Being informed allows us to more effectively resist collectively. So.
Kristin, thank you. Danielle, yourself. And actually, before you get there, we see some questions popping in the chat. We're definitely going to get to those once we finish up this last portion. So if you're more than welcome to pop a question in the chat, and we'll try to get to those as we can as well. But thank you, Danielle. If you could share with us some strategies that you may have for how to support the community also.
Yeah, I think, we leaned very heavy in the education piece. And I think a big part of being a supportive ally, or even just a supportive person that's in the community, is asking questions and being comfortable, feeling uncomfortable. If you don't know something, ask. There are queer organizations, there are queer professionals that will happily take the time. I would rather somebody ask me a question about how to address somebody, how to appropriately navigate a situation, than somebody kind of fumbling through that or just not addressing it at all. And I also think we can't say enough about the visibility piece. I think if you are an ally, having rainbow flags in your room, maybe even just a sticker that says it's a safe space, anecdotally, and not to just always talk about where I work, but this is kind of my world. But at Time Out Youth last year, over 1,000 LGBTQ kids walked through our door. And that's kids that had the access and the ability to get here that are out. And it's disheartening to think about how many more we haven't been able to reach. But you can reach them in your classroom. You can reach them in like a break room at your job, just having little signs letting people know that you're safe, and then remembering that 40% piece, that if someone just has one person, it could literally save their life.
You're on mute.
Thank you for that. Knew it was going to happen at least once. Last but not least, Zay, if you could share with us your thoughts on how to support the community strategies that you may have here as well.
Yeah, so an instance that just, I'm gonna bring it back to the bathroom bill again, I'm sorry. But an instance that just happened at work literally 2 days ago. A woman with PCOS, a medical condition, had gone into the women's bathroom. There was another lady in there who assumed it was a man because she had some facial hair. She came out of the bathroom, got the manager, and then went on to confront this lady with PCOS. It was not a good experience. The woman was misgendering this lady just because she had a medical condition. It was heartbreaking, honestly. They walked out of there, and the lady who was discriminating against her still was in there, yelling at one of my coworkers, got up in her face, and the manager had to de-escalate the situation. The lady with PCOS was still waiting out there just to literally show her physical ID to this lady, proving that she was a biological woman. It was mind-blowing for me because it just showed how transphobia reflects on not only transgender people. And these issues are affecting everybody, not only transgender, LGBTQ plus people. Yeah, it was very sad to see that actually happened. But yeah, just being there for those type of people. All the workers were trying to support this lady with PCOS, trying to apologize for the actions and everything. But yeah, just really put it into perspective how these issues affect everybody.
Thank you for that. Thank you. So I appreciate everyone on the panel for being here. Quickly for those, we're going to jump to at least one of the two questions we're going to try to get to. Be on the lookout after this. I believe tomorrow you should be, for panelists who are here, should receive an email with a follow-up survey as well. If you're more than welcome to, please complete the survey to be able to better support raising what we do when it comes to these events as well in the future. You may receive also some other information when it comes to panelists that are able to share information with you to follow up with them by choice also. So one of the questions we had here, and this is a great one, I'll let whoever on the floor wants to in the few minutes we have. What do y'all do for self-care? With the work that we do, not even just the work, but the lives that you may live, there's a lot that goes on when we just existing. Can you share any thoughts that you have like in the next minute or so on what do you do to help protect yourself and care for yourselves as well?
I can go first. I have often compared right now to feeling like COVID times where you're providing support to people, but also having to compartmentalize your own stuff because you're also dealing with the thing. And self-care is so important. And I think having community around you that kind of like gets it and is able to like not talk about stuff if you don't want to talk about it. We are confronted with all of these issues all the time from 9 to 5, and we don't necessarily want to go home and talk about statistics or the news or whatever. So I think a lot of undemanding time for myself, I know, is extremely important.
Anyone else who can share self-care strategies or ways that you care for yourself mentally, physically, or emotionally as well?
Yeah, so for me, social media has not been a help recently, so I've been trying to stay away from that. Self-care also, I do some journaling just to remind myself those positive affirmations that I do belong here and that I will continue to be here, no matter the political whatever stuff going on. I still have a place in this world. So just reminding myself and having people that also remind me of that is also a good, you know.
Okay. Anyone else? Kristin, Kevin, that you could share with?
Well, I have a great and supportive church community, and so I really rely on their support, and I also have supportive friends and that I can talk to, but also just hang out with and not talk about the issues that are at hand. is a way that I kind of engage in self-care.
Thank you, Kristin.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that there's always a balance between how involved we are, but also a feeling of sort of like movement in making change and resisting. I think like taking a look at liberation psychology and how we found that like being actively involved in resistance and activism can actually mitigate some of the experiences of trauma that are related to harm. And so I feel like there's always a balance between knowing when to step back and say, okay, I need to turn my phone off. I need to go hang out with my kid or go have fun or, hang out with friends. And then I need to get back to it because I need to feel like I'm really working towards change. And that balance has really been helpful for me. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much to the panelists. We are at time, so unfortunately, for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and call us for this webinar today. Thank you for everyone who participated as panelists. Thank you all for showing up. Again, look out for the follow-up survey. Answer that as anonymous as well. That can help us form these events further. You should have access to my information at the very least. So if there's someone here that you have not been able to reach out to or would like to converse with, please let me know, and I'll try to get you connected. Otherwise, have a great day. Keep shining. Live with love. Lead with grace. If there's anything that we can do for you in the future, if you have any ideas, questions for us, please let me know. Otherwise, take care, and I will see you all later.